Sophia stood at the altar, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had given everything to Alexander, her love, her trust, and her dreams. But as she waited for him to take her hand, the whispers turned into gasps. Alexander never showed up. Instead, a single message was delivered to her: "This marriage is a mistake. I cannot do it." The words shattered her like glass. Humiliation burned in her veins as she faced the crowd, their judgmental eyes piercing through her soul. The man she had loved, the man who had promised her forever, had abandoned her without explanation. She ran, her wedding dress dragging through the streets as tears blurred her vision. That night, she disappeared from the world, carrying a secret that no one knew, a secret that would one day bring Alexander to his knees. Years later, Alexander sat in his blacked-out SUV, his driver waiting at the red light. His life had been filled with success, money, and power, but an unexplainable emptiness still lingered. Then, through the rain-streaked window, he saw her, Sophia, the woman he had betrayed. But she was not alone. 4 identical little faces clung to her hands, their innocent laughter ringing through the air. A wave of shock crashed over him as his breath caught in his throat. His eyes darted from one child to the next. They were his. He could see himself in their eyes, in their expressions. His world tilted, and for the first time in years, Alexander felt something he had long buried: regret. His hands clenched into fists. How had she hidden them from him? Why had she never told him? And most importantly, why did she act as if he did not exist? Alexander knew one thing. He would not let her get away with this. If she thought she could keep his children from him, she was wrong. As his car sped away, a plan formed in his mind. He would take her to court. He would take back what was his. Sophia tightened her grip on the small hands in hers, pulling her coat tighter against the cold wind. The city had never felt lonelier, even with her 4 beautiful children by her side. They were her world, her strength, and the reason she had survived after being abandoned in the most brutal way. She had learned to live without Alexander, had trained her heart to forget him, but as she crossed the street, an eerie feeling crept up her spine, as if someone was watching her. Miles away, in his penthouse office, Alexander poured himself a glass of whiskey, his jaw tightening as he stared at the folder in front of him. His investigator had done well. Every detail of Sophia's life in the past years lay before him: where she lived, where she worked, and, most importantly, where his children had been all this time. His fingers drummed against the glass table. She had hidden them from him, deprived him of the chance to be a father. His pride burned at the betrayal. It did not matter that he had been the one to leave her. It did not matter that guilt clawed at his chest every time he remembered the way he had walked away. The only thing that mattered now was that she had taken his bloodline and kept it from him. He picked up his phone, his voice cold and steady. "File the case. I want full custody." Meanwhile, Sophia sat in her small apartment, unaware of the storm brewing. She kissed each of her children's foreheads as they slept, their tiny chests rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. A mother's love was the only wealth she could give them. But by morning, everything would change. The morning air was crisp, but Sophia felt suffocated the moment she opened her front door. A man in a sharp black suit stood before her, holding a thick envelope. His expression was unreadable, his presence unnerving. "Miss Sophia Carter?" he asked formally. Her stomach twisted. "Yes?" "You have been served," he said, handing her the envelope before walking away without another word. Sophia's hands trembled as she ripped it open. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes darted over the words. Custody petition, full parental rights, filed by Alexander King. The paper nearly slipped from her fingers. Number. This could not be happening. She slammed the door shut, her heart pounding wildly. She felt dizzy, her mind racing through the years of struggle, of sacrifice. He had walked away from her, left her to fend for herself, and now he wanted to take away the only thing that had kept her alive. Tears burned her eyes, but she fought them back. Not again. I will not let him break me again. That night, as her children slept peacefully, Sophia sat alone, staring at the legal papers with steely determination. If Alexander thought she would surrender without a fight, he was mistaken. She had lost him once. She would not lose her children. Sophia sat in the dim light of her small living room, staring at the legal papers until the words blurred. The past she had fought so hard to bury had resurfaced like a nightmare. Alexander had left her when she needed him most, and now he wanted to take her children. Number over my dead body. With a deep breath, she picked up her phone and dialed the only person she could trust, her best friend, Olivia. He is trying to take them, Liv. Sophia's voice cracked, but she refused to cry. He abandoned me, and now he suddenly wants to be a father? Olivia cursed under her breath. That arrogant... Listen, you need a lawyer, a damn good one. Sophia bit her lip. Lawyers cost money, money she barely had after working 2 jobs just to put food on the table. But this was not just about her. This was about her children, about keeping them safe. Meanwhile, across the city, Alexander sat in his private office, his lawyer detailing their next steps. We have a strong case, the attorney assured him. You are wealthy, stable, and can provide a better future for them. Alexander nodded, but something gnawed at him. He had expected anger from Sophia, but when he had seen her earlier that day, there had been something else in her eyes. Fear. Why was she so afraid of losing them? Unless she thinks I will hurt them. The thought unsettled him. He wanted his children, but was he truly prepared to destroy the woman who had raised them? Sophia, on the other hand, had already made up her mind. She would fight with everything she had, even if it meant facing the man who had once broken her heart. And this time, she would not break. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and filled with tension thick enough to suffocate. Sophia sat at the defendant's table, her hands clenched into fists on her lap. She had barely slept, barely eaten, but she refused to look weak. Across from her sat Alexander, his presence as commanding as ever in his tailored suit, his expression unreadable. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Alexander's lawyer spoke first, his voice smooth and confident. Your Honor, my client, Mr. King, was unaware of the existence of his children. Had he known, he would have provided for them. He is a respected businessman, financially stable, and can offer these children the life they deserve. He seeks full custody. Sophia's nails dug into her palms. The life they deserve? As if money could replace the years of love, the sacrifices she had made. Her lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has been the sole caretaker of these children since birth. She has loved them, raised them, and provided for them without Mr. King's assistance. The fact that he abandoned her before marriage and now seeks custody raises serious concerns about his intentions. Alexander's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Then the judge turned to him. Mr. King, why did you leave Miss Carter? The question sent a shockwave through the courtroom. Sophia's breath hitched. It was the question she had been asking for years. For the first time, Alexander hesitated. A flicker of something, regret, pain, crossed his face. "I believed she betrayed me," he finally said, his voice low. "I was wrong." Sophia's heart pounded. Wrong? That was all he had to say? The judge nodded. "That will be taken into consideration. We will reconvene with testimony from both parties. Until then, the children will remain with their mother." Sophia exhaled, relief washing over her, but she knew this was far from over. As she stood to leave, Alexander's voice stopped her. "We need to talk." She turned, meeting his gaze head-on. There is nothing left to say. But deep down, she knew that was a lie. Sophia stormed out of the courtroom, her pulse racing. The moment she stepped outside, she felt his presence behind her. "Sophia." Alexander's voice was low but firm. She whirled around, her eyes blazing. "You have no right. You left me, Alexander. You left me humiliated, pregnant, and alone. And now you think you can just show up and take them?" His expression hardened. "I did not know, Sophia." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Because you did not care to ask. Do you have any idea what I went through? How I had to beg for jobs while carrying your children? How I cried myself to sleep because I had nothing?" Her voice cracked, but she refused to break in front of him. Alexander took a step closer, his gaze intense. "I made a mistake." She shook her head. "A mistake? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was abandon me when I needed you the most." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I was told—" He stopped himself. Sophia narrowed her eyes. "Told what?" His jaw tensed, as if battling with himself. "I thought you betrayed me. Someone made me believe you were unfaithful." Sophia felt the ground shift beneath her. "And instead of talking to me, you disappeared?" "I was a fool," he admitted. "But that does not change the fact that they are my children too." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "They do not even know you, Alexander. They do not need you." His voice turned cold. "That is not your choice to make." Her stomach twisted. The fight was far from over. And the worst part? She was beginning to wonder who had fed him those lies all those years ago. Sophia could not sleep that night. Alexander's words kept replaying in her mind. "Someone made me believe you were unfaithful. But who and why?" She had spent years hating him for abandoning her, believing he had never loved her enough to stay. But what if someone had orchestrated her downfall? She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the legal papers on the table. The fight for her children was just beginning, but now another battle stirred within her, the battle for the truth. Meanwhile, Alexander sat in his penthouse, gripping a glass of whiskey, but the alcohol did nothing to numb his thoughts. He had believed a lie, and because of it, he had lost years with his children. His mind raced back to the night before the wedding, the whispers in his ear, the photos that had been slipped under his door. Pictures of Sophia with another man. He had been blinded by rage, by betrayal. But what if it had all been a setup? His fists clenched. There was only one person who had the motive. Veronica, his ex-fiancée, the woman he had been with before Sophia. She had never accepted their relationship. Had she really gone so far as to fabricate evidence just to tear them apart? Sophia knew she needed answers. The next morning, she called Olivia. "I need you to help me find out who ruined my life." At the same time, Alexander made a call of his own. "Find out everything about the photos I received years ago. I need the truth." Neither of them realized that the truth was far darker than they imagined. Sophia sat in the small cafe, her fingers curled around a cup of coffee she had barely touched. Olivia sat across from her, eyes sharp with determination. "I did some digging," Olivia said, lowering her voice, "and you are not going to believe this." Sophia's heart pounded. "Tell me." "Veronica paid a private investigator to follow you before the wedding. She doctored photos, made it look like you were cheating. Then she sent them to Alexander the night before your wedding." Olivia exhaled. She made sure he would never walk down that aisle. Sophia's blood ran cold. All these years she had believed Alexander had abandoned her willingly. But he had been manipulated. "She destroyed my life," she whispered, "and he let her." Meanwhile, across the city, Alexander's investigator confirmed the same truth. He stared at the reports, his stomach churning. Veronica had fed him lies, and he had been too blind, too arrogant to question them. His grip tightened around his phone as he dialed her number. The moment she answered, he did not bother with pleasantries. "You ruined everything, Veronica." A soft, mocking laugh came from the other end. "Took you long enough to figure it out." Alexander's breath turned ragged. "Why?" "Because you were mine first," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "And I was not about to lose to her." He hung up, his pulse roaring in his ears. His mistake had cost him Sophia, cost him his children. And now he had to face the consequences. Sophia, on the other hand, wiped away her tears and stood. "She may have broken us before, but she will not take my children. This time I am fighting back." And for the first time in years, she felt powerful. The next court hearing arrived faster than Sophia expected. She walked in with her head held high, but inside her heart pounded. She had spent years struggling, surviving, but this was the fight of her life. Alexander was already seated, his eyes locked onto her the moment she entered. But there was something different this time. He did not look like a man out for revenge. He looked like a man carrying regret. The proceedings began, and his lawyer once again pushed for full custody. "Mr. King can provide financial stability, educational opportunities, and a life these children deserve." Sophia's lawyer stood immediately. "Your Honor, my client has raised these children alone for years. She has given them love, safety, and stability. Money does not replace a mother's devotion." Then, to everyone's surprise, Alexander rose. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The courtroom fell silent. Even Sophia stiffened. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Alexander turned to face the court, but his words were meant for Sophia. "I came here to take my children because I believed I had been wronged. I thought I had been deceived, but I was the one who was deceived." He swallowed hard. "I made a terrible mistake. I believed a lie that cost me my family, and for that, I do not deserve full custody." Gasps filled the room. Even Sophia felt like the air had been knocked from her lungs. "I will not take them from their mother," Alexander continued. "I only ask for the chance to be in their lives, to make up for the years I lost." His voice broke slightly. "Please." Sophia's hands trembled. She had expected a battle, but not this, not his surrender. The judge studied them both carefully before speaking. "In light of Mr. King's statement, I will grant joint custody arrangements with the children primarily residing with their mother." It was over. She had won, or had she? As the gavel came down, Alexander turned to Sophia. His voice was low, almost pleading. "Please, let me prove that I can be better." She looked at him, at the man who had once shattered her heart, and for the first time in years she did not know what to feel. The courtroom emptied, but Sophia remained seated, her mind racing. She had fought so hard, prepared for war, yet Alexander had done the one thing she never expected. He had admitted he was wrong. She finally stood, her lawyer squeezing her shoulder. "You won, Sophia." Had she? Because as she turned and saw Alexander waiting for her by the door, something inside her wavered. This was not just about winning. This was about the past, about the years lost, about the children who would now have to face a man they had never known. She walked toward him slowly, her expression guarded. "You shocked me today." He nodded, his gaze filled with something unfamiliar, genuine remorse. "I did not come here to hurt you. I just wanted to be their father." Sophia exhaled. "And what about me, Alexander? Do I just forget the pain you caused? The nights I spent crying, wondering why I was not enough?" His jaw tightened. "I do not expect you to forgive me, but I will spend the rest of my life proving to you and to them that I will never walk away again." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I do not know if I can ever trust you." "I know," he said softly, "but I will not give up." Just then, a small voice called out from behind them, "Mommy?" Sophia turned to see her 4 children standing with Olivia, their innocent eyes flickering between her and Alexander. Her heart clenched. This was not just about her anymore. It never had been. She knelt, gathering them into her arms. Then she glanced up at Alexander. "They deserve to know you. But if you ever hurt them the way you hurt me, I swear, I will never let you near them again." A slow nod. "I would not expect anything less." And as they stepped outside, the cold air hit her. But for the first time in years, it did not feel as heavy. This was not a fairy tale ending. But maybe, just maybe, it was a new beginning.